Our next presenter is an associate professor of art history at Lake Forest College, where he is the chair of the American Studies program. Dr. Miguel de Baca specializes in modern and contemporary American art history. He's the author of Memory Work and Truett and Sculpture on the subject of the pioneering minimalist artist. And his work explores how memory is evoked through objects, architecture, and marked sites. Please welcome Dr. Miguel de Baca.
This is a subject about which you know more than you think, because contemporary art is all about you, and you, and you, and you. It's about all of us, and it's about making us aware of our experiences. So to kick things off, I want to look at this sculpture, which is Robert Morris's Mirrored Cubes of 1965-66. Right around the middle of the 1960s, emerging artists pursued the idea that art was less about the object itself and more about the viewer's experience. So to illustrate this concept, let's compare it with another sculpture. Here on the left, this is Bernini's Vision of Constantine from 1670. This is at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican in Rome. So there's 2 points of comparison that I'd like to mention. The first has to do with the idea that traditionally an artwork was separated from ordinary perception. Now in sculpture, the way that artists did this, the way they introduced this, was by way of a pedestal or a base that physically announces the separation between the story told by the sculpture and the space that's surrounding the beholder. But in Morris's sculpture, we see no such base, no such pedestal is there. The artwork is literally on the same floor as the one that we're standing on looking at it. Okay, so secondly, I think we have to think about material. Morris chose mirrors because, in his words, you are aware of yourself at the same time as you're aware of the work. So in other words, the mirrored surfaces produce complex and shifting interactions between the viewer and the gallery that the viewer is standing in, and all of that is vis-a-vis the artwork. Where people get hung up, I think, with contemporary art is that they believe that art should somehow make sense of or bring order to or bring logic to the messiness of our everyday lives. But in contemporary art, this is not so. Since the 1960s, much of contemporary art rebuffs that expectation, preferring instead to reflect the world and its chaos. Now, my own scholarship, my stake in this, is on the subject of how contemporary artists use memory in sometimes really unwieldy and chaotic ways in order to fashion new paradigms of public culture that respond to new emerging political and social needs. All right, thinking about the public is a vital part of contemporary art, and in order to illustrate this concept, I'm going to tell you a parable, which I like to tell my students. I call it the parable of the mouse and the museum. Okay, so over here, there's Mickey or whatever, okay, and then on the right here is our city's storied institution, the Art Institute of Chicago. Now, when we go to the museum, what are we looking for? We're looking for inspiration, we're looking for pleasure, we're looking for a sense of intellectual stimulation. But why would a mouse go to the Art Institute of Chicago? It's not for the French Impressionism. It's not for the Chagall windows. It's not even for the miniatures, the Thorne miniature room. And everybody loves the miniatures. Okay, the mouse is going to the museum for crumbs, of course, which were left behind in the cafe. So this brings me to a very important point. Who you are inside the gallery or museum is determined by who you are outside of it. Since the 60s, artists have been interested in reflecting a more diverse conception of self and a more complicated reality. So, The next time you're in the museum and you're puzzled by something you see, don't ask yourself, why is this art? Instead, ask yourself, who am I and why am I here? And things will go much better, I promise.